We are Zooming with the one and only Mr. Chad Darnell, who is an actor, a writer, a director, and also a casting director as well. Welcome. We appreciate you so much for joining us.
Thanks. And I think we both went to Georgia State.
Oh, you went to Georgia State
I
too.
went to Georgia State, yeah. And
Awesome.
that's when I got started. I was like doing a little bit of acting, but then casting is kind of what put me through college, working as an extras casting assistant on a bunch of TV shows in the 90s.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. Well, man, we appreciate you so much for your time. And speaking of time, these are some very interesting times right now. There is currently this big story of the WGA strike that's going on right now. A lot of things happening within this. For the viewers who kind of don't understand what's going on and what's happening, can you kind of break it down and explain to them?
So essentially, it's the writers' union, which is a union for all of the TV and film, and also certain podcasts now, late night show, talk show writers. Our contract with the AMPTP has the producers has come up for negotiation, and now there are certain things that need to be addressed that 15 years ago didn't even exist. One of them being back in 2007, 2008, that first strike. We were negotiating and wanted financial compensation for what was called "quote unquote" new media. And back then, new media was anything that was created that was put on the internet. And really, when you break it down, what it was at that point, I was working on a TV show called Crossing Jordan with Jill Hennessy. And one of the examples they were using is we had on the NBC.com website, if you went to our shows page, you had a little box, and Steve Valentine, who played the character of Nigel, it was Nigel's room. And so Nigel's character was talking about things that were happening in the morgue. And that was scripted material that had to be written, that had to be performed by an actor, that had to be shot by a crew. And at the time, the AMPTP was like, no, that's just part of your job. You just have to write that. And that wasn't very, as the Elizabeth Olsen, that doesn't seem very fair. And so we fought for that. And now what that new media is, those little videos on the internet, is now called Hulu. It's now called Netflix. It's now called Amazon. Huge studios are now created and built, and thousands of people are employed for new media. And so that is a big thing that needs to be addressed. How you consume that material, how many times you watch it, the residuals that the writers, the actors, the directors, right now we're just focused on the writers, but they need to be compensated. And that's one of the very big pieces of this puzzle. And also AI, which is a whole other thing that we need to address, because as this AI takeover on the internet with people writing, it starts off fun. Like you do little photos of yourself, and then you tell it to tell you a story. But that AI is coming from somewhere, and some of that their concern is that you would be taking existing material that I wrote and then plugging it through an AI so that can create a story. So again, compensation and also rights to that material needs to be addressed.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got that. So as far as because I know there is this, like you said, big thing with AI and stuff like that. What I've because and there have been I've had some concerns within my position. Some like is AI gonna try to take the position of the traditional journalist? It's already
And take your
impacting.
voice.
Yeah,
Take your voice.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's taking, they have their own voices. They have voices. They can spew out pretty much anything that you put in and stuff. And so it's like it's a really big concern. So how are you guys I guess fighting that, or how are y'all overcoming that obstacle?
That's the big question right now, because much like in 2007, the big complaint was, well, we can't define new media, so we can't address it right now. And that was part of the strike. So very much right now, they're trying to discuss like what control anyone has over AI when it comes to scripted material. And unfortunately, I think it's something that everybody will settle on something. And then, in a few years from now, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, we all of this came out. And these are things that we don't even know will exist in a few years. So right now, it's just trying to get the control over the material and any sort of compensation that would come from a script being used through AI. So
Interesting.
unfortunately, it's a big unknown at this point.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So as far as the strike's going on right now. Writers are on strike. Can you tell me exactly? Obviously, the big thing is money, compensation, right? What exactly is there like a certain percentage that writers want, or like, can you tell? Like, we know it's compensation, but what is exactly that the writers want? Is it like a specific number?
Part of that issue is the fact in 2007, 2008, a lot of the shows like Crossing Jordan at the time, Alias, Judging Amy, Cold Case, those shows when you were a baby. Those shows back then, we had 22 to 25 episodes a year. So we had big writers' rooms. And in a writer's room, like right now, like in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the upfronts in New York. The upfronts are when the studios are going to present the shows that they are going to premiere in the fall. So your brand new shows. And during that time between May and August, the writers get together in a room and they break the stories. So there will be a giant whiteboard and they will take all the characters from number 1 on the call sheet down to number 10, like whoever's the most important characters, and they're going to plot out their entire season, their character arcs. They are going to the plot development over the year. If we're going to have a big earthquake in one episode, what does that mean to everybody else? What does that mean to the storyline down the road? If it's a show like Alias or The Citadel, a show that's got like a big mythology, then you're plotting out all of that mythology. And that takes weeks. That takes a lot of time, a lot of actors, I mean, a lot of writers sitting around a table, heavy discussions. Everybody's creative. Everybody's got a thought. You've got your showrunners that are trying to keep control of the story and their vision for it. But then also you begin to break out the episodes. So if you have 8 to 10 writers on a show, if you had a big show like that, they all go back into their offices during the day and they start writing their episodes. So, Molly might have episode 4. So she knows up from the break when we went into the writer's room and we're discussing the characters and what's going to happen in that timeline. She's going to come up with a treatment for her episode, whatever issues are happening within that episode, take it back. They're all going to discuss it again. She's going to start writing that script. We may be a month or 2 away from shooting, but we need to get that script done because once that script is in a good place, then she needs to start writing episode 16. So this is the process in the writer's room. That's one of the big issues that the WGA has, is because the AMPTP doesn't want them to have time to write. They're trying to shorten that space. And so because of that, the writers are making a lot less money. They're making a lot less money because it's a lot less time. Also with your stream, those were your big network shows. So, like a show like NCIS and a show like The Resident that was shot here in Atlanta, they have about 22, 24 episodes. So they're going to, that crew will be shooting from like August to maybe March. And so there's a lot more time for rewrites. There's a lot more time to edit. And those are network shows. So they have bigger orders for episodes. But your streamers, your Outer Banks, your Citadel, you have 8 to 10 episodes. So again, it's less money for those writers. They're tied up for a short period of time. They're not making as much money. So then once that show is done, they're having to go out and pitch themselves and try to get on another show or another writer's room. So that's a big issue. They need to be compensated for the time, but also whether it's 2 or 3 months in a writer's room breaking story at the beginning, or it's a month and a half, that time is very, very important because you find people on the internet that are like, oh, this show, like this character never would have. Yeah, because they didn't have enough time creatively in the writer's room to address these issues. So that's one of the big issues, is the writer's room and the compensation for them being in the writer's room during that time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That makes
Definitely
sense.
understand. Yeah. That does make sense. Definitely understanding that now. So let me ask you this. So the networks, right? Even though that lots of films have halted because of the strike and stuff, networks regardlessly still need content, right? So my question is, does this kind of open up a gateway for maybe those people who have been having a hard time trying to get into the industry and trying to get
Oh,
shows pitched that they have, like independent people, or it doesn't?
no. And that's the thing. because if you are a Writers Guild member or an aspiring guild member, you can't cross that line. And so during this time, like my own little show that I'm trying to sell right now, I can't query it. I can't contact producers. I can't contact agents. No one can represent the material on my behalf. And I'm, still like aspiring guild member because of all of the things that I've worked on. I did a little independent movie 13 years ago that I wrote and directed myself. It did the festival circuit. I did a film that we shot, but it was a non-union project. So, again, as you were starting off in the business, you do have to do these little things so that eventually you do get hired by a guild signatory producer who then gets you into the guild. And with the show that I'm trying to sell right now, it would become a signatory union project. I would be a card carrying member of the Writers Guild. But right now, as close as we are to like taking it out in meetings, now we can't talk. And actually the studios, starting back in January of this year, they stopped taking a lot of meetings and pitches because there was this fear that the strike was going to happen. So why would you buy a project that you can't put into production? So a lot of the meetings have slowed down. A lot of productions in Los Angeles have slowed down. I think it was 40% less projects were being shot in Los Angeles from January to April than 40% less than last year. So already it's impacting the economy and crews and families that are out there that are working in the industry. But if you are not a guild member, you can't take your project out right now. You're not supposed to be trying to sell it to people. No one's supposed to be buying it. And that's until the strike is over, you have to honor and support the guild. And that's just as a brothers and sisters in support of the union. That's what we have to do.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So let me ask you this. So for what does the future look like? How long do you expect this to last? And basically what needs to be done to basically make it in?
Unfortunately, I was one of those people, and I think I was just trying to be very optimistic, but like on all my social media, like I felt pretty positive that the strike was not going to happen because this was Carol Lombardi, who was one of the negotiators for the AMPTP. She had never had a strike on her watch when in negotiations. It was the first time for everything, and also we were not hearing anything coming out from behind closed doors. In 1988, 2007, the IATSE strike a couple of years ago, you just kept hearing all these rumors about what was coming out. So because everything was like on such a lockdown and everything was so quiet, I thought that they were genuinely making great headroom. And then of course, as the strike was announced and the negotiators for the Writers Guild came out, they were pretty far apart on certain things. The writers' room being one of them, compensation for that. They did make a lot of headway in getting money for staff writers and compensation for them. They're still far apart on situations like with AI. So there's a few things they're still very far apart on. What this means immediately for us is that any show that's in production right now, if that script is not locked, they can't continue shooting. So over the next couple of weeks and the next couple of months, you're going to see a lot of shows shutting down if this continues to go. Hopefully they are still continuing to negotiate and go back to the table and get this resolved quickly. But I'm working on a show currently in Savannah, and we are supposed to wrap at the end of May. And the writers, the showrunners, they all worked very diligently to get the rest of those scripts locked so that production can finish filming the series and wrap on time. So that show will get done, and then it will go through post-production, and then hopefully you'll see it on freebie this fall. But other shows that are just starting up that it was just announced on Twitter yesterday, Cobra Kai, they're closing their writer's room. So they will probably only get like their first 2 episodes in the can. And then if the strike is still going on, they will have to shut down and they won't be shooting. Shows like, James Gunn is relaunching the DCU. He's the writer. So James Gunn's hiking around a studio right now holding the sign. He can't work on that script. And that script is going to be constantly worked on until they announce whoever's the new Superman at Comic-Con. So that production was supposed to go into production in January of next year. every day, every week that this pushes, that movie is going to end up getting pushed too. So your favorite TV shows, your favorite movies, they're all going to start getting pushed. This fall, if this goes on for 2 or 3 months, you're not going to have a new fall season. And so, and that's what happened. And then that's just how it affects you as a viewer, but also what affects the studios in their holdout. What happened in 2007, NBC was the #1 network in the country. And because all of the programming fell off, we were introduced to a lot of reality television, Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice, Big Brother. People kind of stopped watching. I mean, they did have their own ratings, but then a lot of the big millions and millions of viewers, the 14, the 27 million viewers per show, fell way off. And of course, now with streaming, it's very hard to see like, well, how many people really watch that show? Because now we watch everything on demand with our own time. So Ted Lasso may come out today, but you don't watch it until Saturday. So it's changed the game substantially, and we don't know what's going to happen because this could go on for a week, or it could go on for 3 months. It could go on throughout the summer. But the big definition last time, we couldn't define what new media was. We got through that. We got a contract. We went back to work. Now it seems to be the big issue is the writers' rooms, the AI. I feel like we're closer to getting a negotiated contract, a fair contract. I also thought this last week, but I would hope that we are closer to a negotiated contract because at the end of the month, they will begin negotiations with the Directors Guild of America because their contract comes up and they will probably call for, if they do not have a negotiated strike by June 30th, they will call and they will strike. And then you don't have any directors. And then very quickly after that, you don't have any actors because the Screen Actors Guild contract comes up. So the AMPTP is going to want to negotiate a very solid and fair contract for their writers because DGA and SAG will be coming in right after them.
Okay, got it. So, have you done any of the protesting, the picketing? Are they doing any of that here in Atlanta? Any rallies?
So in 2007, because I was working for a bunch of writers on Crossing Jordan and Sean Hayes, I got to know a lot of writers. And so I would help organize event gates. I organized Homecoming at the old Sony, which used to be the old MGM lot where they shot The Wizard of Oz in Culver City. And so I brought out a bunch of old writers and actors, and it was a great event. And it put a button on the fact that the union has done so much to keep these people with retirement and with issues that were very important to their livelihoods and their families' livelihoods. And I organized event gates every Friday where certain cast members would come. That was in Los Angeles. Right now, there's only demonstrations in New York and Los Angeles. There are not a lot of union members who live in Georgia, primarily because the writers' rooms tend to be in Los Angeles. But I'll be announcing on my social media. I'm sure everybody on your social media pages will gather. At some point, somebody's going to organize an event. Back in 2007, over the Christmas break, a lot of the writers who came home to Atlanta for Christmas, like we went down to the Turner complex and protested around Turner. So you will see some events coming up, but right now it's not like the guild members in California where they have to march every single day as part of their duties as a union member.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chad. I appreciate you so much for breaking all of this down and explaining it to the viewers and stuff, because I know that, the viewers definitely were wanting to know exactly what were all the ins and outs of this thing that's going on and stuff. So we appreciate you so much for coming on and breaking that down for everybody. And
You're welcome.
yeah, and we love our shows, and of course we don't want to see them go away and stuff. So hopefully you guys can all come to an agreement, and hey, we can get back to watching. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
All right.
thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.